Hey everyone and welcome. If you've ever been in charge of a database, you know the classic setup, right? One big, powerful server doing all the heavy lifting. But as our data needs have absolutely exploded, that single server model is really starting to show its cracks. So today we're going to take a journey from that one physical box to the huge, scalable world of the cloud.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by looking at the problems with physical servers. Then we'll get into the magic of virtualization. From there, we'll scale it all the way up to the cloud, break down the different ways you can use it, and finally tie it all together to see what this means for the databases we use every day.
So let's start at the beginning. What was the core problem that really kicked off this whole massive shift in technology?
For a long time, the answer was, yeah, pretty much. You'd buy a big, powerful machine, and you were good to go. But what happens when you're only using, say, 20% of its power on a quiet afternoon, but you need 150% of its power during a huge holiday sale? Well, you end up with a ton of wasted resources most of the time, and you hit a hard ceiling when demand spikes. Scaling up just meant buying another expensive server, and that's just not efficient or flexible enough anymore.
And this leads us directly to the first major breakthrough, virtualization. The big question became, how can we make one server act like it's a whole bunch of servers and get way more bang for our buck from the hardware we already own?
And the answer is right here, virtualization. This is the idea that truly changed everything. Instead of dedicating an entire physical machine to just one operating system and one job, virtualization lets us slice up that machine's resources, its CPU, its memory, its storage, and create multiple, totally independent virtual computers, all running on that single piece of hardware.
The piece of software that makes all this possible is called a hypervisor. You can think of it like a traffic cop for the computer's hardware. It sits right between the physical machine and all the virtual machines, and its job is to create them, manage them, and make absolutely sure each one gets the resources it needs without stepping on any other's toes. It's really the secret sauce that makes virtualization work.
So this is kind of how it all stacks up. At the very bottom, you have your physical server, the actual metal. On top of that, you install the hypervisor. And then that hypervisor can run multiple, completely isolated virtual machines. Each one can have its own operating system, its own apps, and to each of those VMs, it feels like it has the whole machine to itself, even though it's sharing. Pretty cool, right?
Okay, so what happens when you take this incredible concept of virtualization and just blow it up to a massive global scale?
Well, you get cloud computing. That's really all it is. The cloud is basically virtualization on an enormous, on-demand scale. So instead of buying and managing your own hardware, you're essentially leasing virtualized computing resources from a provider like Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. This gives you unbelievable scalability and availability, all without the headache of managing the physical stuff yourself.
We're just saying you use the cloud is a little vague, isn't it? It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. So what are the different ways we can actually use these cloud services?
It pretty much breaks down into three main models, and it's all about how much control and responsibility you want to have. So, at the base level, you've got Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. In this model, the provider gives you the raw virtual building blocks, servers, storage, networking. You're still in charge of installing and managing the operating system and all your software. Now, move up a level and you get Platform as a Service, or PaaS. Here, the provider manages the hardware and the operating system. They're giving you a ready-to-go platform so you can just deploy your applications without worrying about system patches or all that stuff. And finally, at the top, you have Software as a Service, or SaaS. This is the one most of us use every day. Think of things like Salesforce or Google Docs. The provider manages literally everything: the hardware, the OS, the application itself. You just use the software and manage your data.
So the key takeaway here is this trade-off. With IaaS, you get the most control, but you also have the most work to do. With SaaS, you have the least control, but also the least to worry about. Choosing the right one really just depends on what your team needs to build and how much of that underlying tech stack you actually want to manage yourselves.
Okay, so let's bring this all back home. We've talked about physical servers, virtualization, and the different cloud service models. How does all of this connect to what we really care about, getting our databases up and running?
Honestly, the difference is like night and day. In the old-school, on-premise world, you had to be the DBA, the system admin, the network guru, and the security expert all rolled into one. You were managing everything from the server racks in the closet to the database software patches. But in the cloud, you pick your service model and you immediately get to offload a huge chunk of that work. If you go with the IaaS, yeah, you still manage the database software, but you never have to think about the hardware. If you choose a PaaS database service, you offload even more. The provider handles backups, patching, scaling, letting you focus almost entirely on your data and your application logic.
And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. These services are the real backbone of modern apps. You've got these incredibly powerful managed databases like Microsoft's Azure Cosmos DB and Amazon's DynamoDB. Or, hey, if you need more control, you can use a service like Amazon EC2, which is an IaaS offering, to just spin up a virtual machine and install any database you want on it. The options are just endless.
So that's really the journey we've been on. We've gone from being stuck with the limitations of a single physical machine to a world where we can deploy a globally distributed, automatically scaling, fully managed database service in a matter of minutes. It's a complete, fundamental shift in how we think about and manage our data infrastructure.
And this all leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. As these cloud platforms get smarter and handle more and more of the traditional admin tasks for us, things like scaling, backups, failover, what does the role of the DBA evolve into? Does it become less about day-to-day maintenance and more about data architecture, security, and high-level performance strategy? It's definitely something to keep in mind as this technology just keeps getting better.
I really hope this explainer helped connect some of the dots between virtualization and the awesome cloud database services we all use every day. If you found it useful, I'd really appreciate it if you shared it. And be sure to subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching.